and welcome to GTV UK News. This is Dr. Ming from London. Today is Wednesday, 17th February 2021. Over the past week, we have seen new events unfolding domestically, regionally, and globally, as well as new policies involving bilateral and multilateral players. How do these events and policies affect the Chinese Communist Party CCP regime and its relations with other countries? We invite Mr. Stephen K. Bannon to continue to inspire us with his answers. Hello, Mr. Bannon.
Hello, Dr. Ming. Thank you very much for having me on the show.
Thank you very much for joining us. So first question is from Daniel. Daniel, please.
And happy Chinese New Year, Mr. Bannon. It's Daniel.
Thank you.
Okay, my question is, in days after Biden's telephone conversation with Xi during Chinese Lunar New Year, he had excused the CCP's genocide in Xinjiang as a cultural norm. How do you feel? Thank you.
Daniel, it's a great question. I think people today in the United States are outraged after the town hall last night. But I want to go back for a second for your audience, because I know your audience is very sophisticated and follows us very closely. I want to go back to the actual call itself. You know, Joe Biden, who hasn't been taking a lot of calls from foreign leaders. Remember, a lot of this now we know is being done by Kamala Harris. If you go to National Pulse, Raheem Kassam has a big story up about this. Also today on LifeSite News, I would have everybody in your audience on the diaspora go to see Steve Mosher. Stephen Mosher is one of the best writers here in the United States about the CCP. He actually has another article about Kamala Harris actually making phone calls to President Macron in France and other world leaders. Biden takes 2 hours with Xi. The readout that came was very nebulous. And particularly said he did push back and talk about human rights, but it was very no definition. But particularly on the CCP virus, and particularly what's going on in Wuhan with WHO, not one mention of the Wuhan virus, not one mention of the Wuhan lab, not one mention of the investigation by WHO, not one mention of the Chinese Communist Party not giving over the raw data. They basically said they're going to work together on climate change and COVID-19 to get solutions. So very generalized kind of happy talk. I think a lot of people here that are China hands, a lot of people that are, are just not even the anti-CCP crowd like myself and others that support the new federal state of China, the whistleblower movement, Miles Guo, but really people that are pretty middle of the road. I think we're very disturbed by this 2-hour conversation and exactly what he's talking about as far as the reset goes for the CCP. Then last night, what I found most disturbing, and I think your audience should find most disturbing, is he almost used the exact phraseology of how the CCP talks about the Uyghurs. And so I think the performance last night was very disturbing. There's a lot of people up on Twitter, criticizing it. Scott Adams, the great cartoonist, has been all over Biden this morning. This is going to be a big story. After I get off here, our show is going to cover this a lot today. A lot of people are talking about it. It's the reason I was late today. This is something that's a very big deal. And I got to tell you, the start of the relationship between Biden's administration and the CCP is just not going to be accepted by the majority of the American people. Majority of the American people want a confrontation with the CCP.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Bannon. Yeah. And next from Castle. Castle, please.
Hello there. And I bring a very hot topic this week, which is Republican Congressman Michael Waltz introduced a bill to boycott Beijing Winter Olympics of 2022 due to the CCP's genocide in Xinjiang. And what is your attitude on this issue?
I'm 100% for the boycott. In fact, it's something that we're going to pick up here starting next week to talk about that. You know, we don't want to hurt the Chinese people, right, by not having the Winter Olympics there. We understand it's a great honor for the Chinese people, but I think particularly today, and I just don't think it's just about the Uyghurs. Although we declared, Pompeo declared the CCP a genocidal regime about its handling of the Uyghurs. I think that the 2022 Winter Olympics ought to be canceled for much more reasons than that. And I think particularly the suppression of the Chinese people and their handling of the CCP virus. Until we get, Biden said last night, think about it, he said, this is not going to be really resolved in the United States until at least Christmas of this year. That will mean it's 2 years in the United States and in Europe that we basically had our economy destroyed, people killed because of what came out of the Wuhan lab. It's just not acceptable. And it's certainly not acceptable for Beijing to, until they come clean with what happened in the Wuhan lab, what type of biological weapons program they have, what was the PLA's involvement, why didn't they try to get to the world and tell the world the truth, why they've been covering this up. I mean, Miles Guo, they call crazy Miles Guo. Miles Guo has been absolutely right on this from the beginning, and Dr. Li Mingyan, who is the War Room 2020 Woman of the Year. She's been 100% correct on this. And until that gets resolved, there shouldn't be any discussions of an Olympics. And it would hurt me to know that some of the Chinese people that maybe have jobs doing this would be hurt. But I think in the broader context of holding the CCP accountable and bringing down the CCP, absolutely we have to have a boycott of the 2022 Winter Olympics.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bannon. I'd like to ask the next question. Boris Johnson said he would be keen to agree a global treaty on pandemics to ensure proper transparency amid the US and the UK concern over the WHO's probe in Wuhan. What does such a move mean to you?
I think we have to get into more of the details. So number one, I think that we've allowed, look, it's your show and our show and others that really had the WHO reverse what they did. Remember, they went over there with a totally compromised group, including Americans that are the middlemen for the money from Tony Fauci to the Wuhan lab. We really haven't gotten answers on any of that. I think Boris Johnson, directionally is understanding the pressure. People want to know what the situation is. And now as the CCP, as the regime gets backed into a corner, they're going to come out with more and more ridiculous nonsense, like it came out of the United States or it came from frozen food. They're going to point in every direction except to that lab and their biological weapons program, right? And the gain of function experiments they were running. So I'm supportive of that. But to me, it's kind of a secondary thing to what we have in front of us right now. And we don't need to talk about other topics. The WHO was totally compromised. It's a subsidiary of the CCP. They went over and initially said it's unlikely it came from the Wuhan lab. It came from, animal to human transmission. It was the pressure of the whistleblower network movement, New Federal State of China, the diaspora, the Chinese people, Miles Guo, GTV, G News, Dr. Ming, your show, World Room, and others, that in 24 hours they reversed that and said, well, we haven't made a final decision yet. And then we found out the lie. The Chinese Communist Party has not given them any access to raw data. None. Zero. You can't make a conclusion until you get that. And it shows you the CCP is not going to give it up until you bring extraordinary pressure. I know I don't need to tell this audience this. They understand how the CCP operates. But I think more and more and more in the United States, people are awakening to the fact that the CCP has its own set of rules for itself. And so I think that we've got to bring this to a head about this investigation with the World Health Organization. And that starts with the raw data.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bannon.